Hello, and welcome to another episode of Hacking with Friends. Today, we have a special guest on. My name is Cody Kinsey. I am the usual host, and we also have on Nick Godshall. And Nick Godshall is a fellow host of the Null Byte channel. Nick, what else is it that you do?
I'm studying mechanical engineering at UCLA right now. So I'm doing some lab work there, and school is about to start in a couple weeks. I also write a couple articles on Null Byte. So far, only 2 or 3 are up, but there's going to be more to come, including one on the topic today about AndroidStudio.
Cool. So you and I originally met in Python class, and since then, we worked on a couple of different things. This is really exciting because this is the first time you've been, well, actually, you've been on the podcast, but this is the first time you've been on the stream. And you are now one of the regular hosts of the Null Byte show, which has over 600,000 subscribers now. So yeah, really, really exciting. And I don't know, it's pretty cool that you as a student are able to do this as a side job, especially just, because of how many people see the show and how much exposure you get. What has kind of led you to select the topics that you've been picking lately? Because I know you've been covering a lot of stuff that's kind of beginner friendly and also leans towards your interest personally.
Well, so I always thought being able to hack Android or smartphones in general has always been one of the more useful skills, because a lot of the topics we cover on Null Byte especially are more focused on hacking Linux machines, but I think right now it's only 2% of the market share of people who use desktop computers, and not many people even use desktop computers anymore. And so I was interested in exploring different payloads and different hacks for Android devices, not only because it's interesting, I find it fascinating, but I want to be able to protect myself from attacks like that. But there's a couple articles on Null Byte on how to hack Android, but I was never going to try that stuff on my phone. And the only way I can learn stuff like this is by actually performing that hack. And because I was never going to compromise the security of my smartphone, I was looking for other solutions. You mentioned I'm in college, so I don't have money to just buy a second phone just for the purposes of hacking. So I was somewhat familiar with AndroidStudio. I played around with it a little bit, and I knew that there's ways to create virtual devices. So I just thought that was a good way to practice on a Android device, because it's free, it only costs computing power, and you can test all the payloads you want on it and completely revert the state in case you screw up.
Yeah, so we have always gotten tons of requests on Null Byte for more videos on Android hacking, and we've done some stuff on using an Android phone to hack, we've done simulating Linux on an Android phone and stuff. But that's not for rooted devices, because we didn't want to tell people that they should root their device necessarily in order to get into this stuff. It gets into a lot of problems that can happen when you have beginners who are opening the floodgates to installing, random applications with their phone and getting root access. That can cause a lot of problems. So we've never really taught a lot about Android security. I am really impressed with all the stuff you can do with AndroidStudio, which you're going to get into today, because it really solves all these problems very neatly. It doesn't require you to have 25 different cell phones if you want to test the same exploit on 25 different models, because it means you can virtualize this stuff and you can make it a lot more simple for somebody who wants to test this stuff, wants to get good at Android hacking, but doesn't have the resources to have a bunch of hardware on hand.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I would almost never recommend someone root their daily driver phone. Of course, if you're a developer, you're going to want to root your phone, but we'll see today, a lot of the hacks that are built into this vulnerability app are not possible on non-rooted devices. So just by rooting your device, you make it vulnerable to so many more attacks. So yeah, you're never going to want to root your device just to test some hacks against it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I would say for any of our viewers who are looking to get into Android hacking, it really is not a good idea to use a phone that you're going to be storing sensitive information on or carrying with you all the time. If you have a burner device, great. And if you got $60 to $80, you can probably go to some store and get a no-name brand Android device. But, is that the device you necessarily want to be hacking on? It's still tied to you in certain ways. I mean, there's better ways of doing this, and that's kind of what we're going to be showing off today. So a lot of people also are super interested in Android hacking because it is so cool, and most people have some sort of smartphone with them. Android is super popular. So for the kind of attacks that are going to be really widespread, Android is a great place to look around and try stuff out. So I think that this is going to be a subject of a lot of interest to many of our viewers, just because we haven't covered it very much. And until I learned about this, I couldn't really think of a good way for most people to get into hacking Android phones.
Yeah, and the best part about this is it comes with a well, this tutorial we're going to go in how to install an APK file onto the virtual device. So basically, if you're familiar with Metasploitable, it just basically you can run it on a virtual machine on your computer and have an extremely vulnerable device to attack hacks on. And it's the exact same principle here, except with an Android device.
Right. So with Metasploitable, we always get told like, hey, like, why are you teaching kids hacking? Like, there's no legitimate way they could use this. Like, this is bad. And the defense we have against that is, legitimate hacking targets like Metasploitable or like some of these deliberately vulnerable APKs that are going to have flaws in them built in that teach people to look for these flaws and make sure that they're not in the kind of apps that they're using, that their company is producing. It's really, really valuable to have this knowledge out there because, without it, it would be a lot harder to keep things secure because you would only be able to have, specialists do that. So there are legitimate ways for people to test out Android hacking skills as well as other hacking skills. And it's these deliberately vulnerable targets that present opportunities for younger people to not get in trouble while they're learning these skills. So if you get in trouble hacking from our show, then, it's not because we didn't give you legitimate ways of testing this stuff out. Your neighbor's phone isn't the only target out there. You can just create one, a virtual one that's perfectly legal to hack. And that is what we're telling you to do.
Yes, definitely. That's the main reason I wanted to explore this too. Just hopefully it creates like less actual hacks in the world because people can hack devices that are safe to hack. Exactly.
Cool. So would you say that this is friendly enough for what level of familiarity with software would you need to have in order to get started with this sort of thing? Is this something that like an average person can get started with if they're curious? Or is this like a computer science, like maybe you've had a year or two of coding before you can really get started kind of thing?
No, definitely like anybody can get started with it. Creating a virtual device is super easy. If anything, you might have to know a little bit about Android devices and the different versions, but not too much at all, just like their names and how recent they are. The only caveat to this is you do need a somewhat capable computer. Like I was running this on my old laptop, which had 8 gigabytes of RAM, and I was using an Intel i5, and that was really, really sluggish. But if you have more than 8 gigabytes of RAM, it should be able to run comfortably. So that is the only like limiting factor to this. But besides that, AndroidStudio is free. It's a relatively small program, and it's super easy to understand.
Cool. Okay, so this is for pretty much anyone. So if you are someone that's been curious about Android security or just emulating an Android device, this is a way you can get started. And I understand this also isn't just phones. You can, I think when I was setting it up, I saw you could do like smartwatches and some other really interesting, cool stuff too. So if you're interested in like embedded devices or little smartwatches and stuff, like there's other stuff on here you can emulate too, which I think is amazing.
Yeah, it even has Android Auto, like for cars.
Cool.
Smartwatches. Yeah, all of it.
Awesome. All right. Well, do you want to get started, or is there anything else you want to preface with?
No, we can just go ahead and jump in. I already have Android Studio open, but the installation process is pretty straightforward. Google has really good documentation on it.
Cool. Let's go ahead and switch over to Nick's screen. And so from the very, very beginning, if you don't have this installed, where would you go to get it? And what's the installation process? Is it pretty straightforward? Yeah,
it's pretty straightforward. The article that I wrote about it, which is not published as of September 17th, but it's going to be up soon. It covers how to install it onto Ubuntu. That one was actually a little more tricky because you have to manually install some drivers, but it's just a couple apt-get commands. Windows is super, super straightforward. So you can just Google Android Studio, and it will be the first link that pops up. It recognizes the operating system running on, so just click the download button, agree to it, and then as you can see, it automatically recognizes that I'm using Windows. So
I messed this up when I tried it because I was spoofing. I by default spoof my my user agent, so it thought my computer was something super weird, and it served me up some other file. I was like, "This is not working." It's like, "Oh right, I'm lying. It's because I'm lying." Yeah. But
as long as you're not doing that, and in case, you can always go to the download options and select your operating system. And this is one of the actual real programs that works on Chrome OS. So in case you got a cheap computer, and like if your school gave it to you, which is something that's going on a lot right now, you can still run Android Studio on that.
Wow, that's great because Chrome OS does not run much.
No, it does not. And so once you get it downloaded, it's going to take, depending on the speed of your internet and the speed of your processor and everything, it's probably going to take 10-15 minutes to install. And then once you're here, we can actually go ahead and create the virtual device.
Cool.
I'm going to restart it because I'm technically in the program right now. So.
Yeah. I have it open. I just installed it on my system, and I'm just in the Android Studio, like, what do you want to do menu. So from that, which just opens up as soon as you open it, I would love to know how to actually, do the thing.
Okay. So here, let me exit this project. Close project. Okay. So this is a similar screen to where you are, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Just looks a little different because this is Windows. So to create your virtual device, we can go to configure, and then the first setting is AVD Manager, which is Android Virtual Device Manager. So we can click that, and let's make this a little bigger so we can read all the tabs. Oops. Oh, I guess, there we go. So as you can see, it's showing that I already have a Nexus 5X, which is about like a 4-year-old phone now, and it's running Android 10.0. But you're probably not going to see anything, so let's go ahead and select Create Virtual Device. And so on the left-hand side, this is what you were talking about earlier. There's phones, obviously, but there's also Android TV, which you can emulate. You can emulate a watch.
Oh, cool. That's really cool.
A tablet. Android tablets are coming back, so this is going to be useful, and Android Auto. But let's just stick with the phones because everybody has a phone.
Yeah.
And then this is where it's going to vary a lot by your what kind of computer you have and like its specs. So I'm running a pretty beefy computer, so I could run like the newer devices. But in case you have an older device, you might have to scroll down to some of the earlier Nexus devices, and they can still, because they're Nexuses, they can still run newer versions of Android, so that's fine. But if you go, it goes really far back to like pre-Nexus devices. Like if you just look at those, like those are from like 2010, 2011, so it goes way back. But it is limited to Google hardware phones. But those are pretty common. Those are pretty popular with Android devices. Like
I'm not going to see. Sorry, I'm not going to see like a Samsung phone or something like that, even though it runs Android.
No, you're only going to see Google devices. But these are like the main reason like Google actually develops phones as like developer tools. Like it's their comparison to the iPhone. Like they want like a baseline so all the developers can know what to build it upon. And that's normally what Android Studio is used for. It's usually meant to create programs. But today we're going to be using it a little bit differently. And so we'll go ahead and select one. So I'm going to just run through it with you. So I'm going to select one of the newer ones, the Pixel 3a. And then you're going to want to make sure that you select one with this little Google Play icon next to it. That just means it comes with the Play Store pre-installed. Sorry about that. It comes with the Play Store pre-installed. And in case you want to download any apps onto your phone, like WhatsApp, just to be able to try to exploit those, it'll make it a lot easier.
Cool.
I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to select Next. And then this is where we're going to select our the version of Android that we're actually going to use.
I see.
And then, so I'm going to stick with Android Q because I already have it installed, but you can go ahead and select a different version of Android. And this will take a little while to download, like Android Q, which is I think it's the newest stable version of Android. Like Android R, I'm pretty sure is still experimental. So Android Q, it's a 1.1 gigabyte download, and that took me like 10 to 15 minutes. So you select the version of Android that you're gonna use, and you can name it whatever you want. So I'll just call this Best Pixel 3a, and finish. And so as you can see, it's already created. The longest part is downloading the system image or the version of Android that you want installed onto the device.
Yeah, I'm already at 40% on my
sweet.
Android. Yeah.
Okay, so you got pretty good internet. Yeah.
It's gotten better, decent.
Yeah. And then there's going to be another waiting period once we actually start a project in Android Studio, because it's going to have to download some other configuration files. Okay. But I already have that done, so I can demonstrate that right away while yours is downloaded.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. And then so once you have your virtual device created, we can go ahead and start a new Android Studio project. Because we're not actually going to be developing app, we only really care about creating the virtual device. I'm just going to select no activity. Next. And you can name whatever you want. The default configurations are fine. There actually was something kind of interesting I wanted to show on that screen. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new Android review, no activity. And then right here, so this is normally for app developers to know what is the minimum software version that the app they're creating will be able to run on. But you can also use it to, it's just some public data about which versions of Android have what market share. So if you go back to Jelly Bean, which was around like Jelly Bean came out like 2014, I think, you can see that this app will run on 99.8% of devices. Another way you can think of this is 99.8% of Android phones are running Jelly Bean or newer. So if certain type of exploits only run on certain types of Android versions, then you can know what kind of phones will be vulnerable to them. So if you go all the way...
what percentage overall? That's cool.
Exactly. And if you go to the newest version, Android Q, Android 10, only 8.2% of Android devices are running this. So if there's an exploit that's only available on Android Q, then it's not going to affect nearly as many devices. Or like I think the biggest use case, if like someone was using like Android phones as a botnet or something, they're going to want to select botnet software that can actually run on almost all Android devices rather than 8.2% of devices. Okay, so we're going to go and finish that. And then, so once you open a new project, this is something that confused me at first. Normally to actually run the Android device, you would go here and select Tools, and there'd be something here that says AVD Manager. But when you first open a new project, that's not going to be there. Because down here in the bottom right, they don't really make it that clear. It's downloading all these configuration files, all these Gradle files, which is what AndroidStudio uses for their applications. So this can take a little bit, like 10 to 15 minutes. So I'm just going to go ahead and open the project that I have from earlier, where it's already all downloaded. Okay, new window. And I'm going to close this. And so this new one right here, my application 1, this will be an example of a project which has already configured itself. And if you want to go ahead and actually run the virtual Android device, you'll go here to Tools, and then again, Android Virtual Device Manager, and we can just select our device. So I'm going to go ahead and select the Nexus 5X, and I'm going to run it. There we go. And so here is the virtual device. I actually used to own this phone. This was like my first smartphone. So it looks just like an Android device. And right here, we can have these are all the hardware settings. So if I want to press the power button to turn it on, which I do, then I can just press this. It should come on. And then got these buttons to indicate the volume rocker. I can rotate the phone, and the virtual accelerometer will respond in the same way. So for all intents and purposes, this is you can do almost anything with this virtual device that you could with a real Android phone. Trying to get it to start. Normally it starts on launch. While I'm waiting for that, if you go down here to this ellipse, you get a lot more interesting settings that you can really play around with. So you can test any kind of use case for the virtual phone. So you can put it anywhere in the world. So I can put it in Toronto, and I can select a random point in Toronto, and now this virtual phone is in Toronto.
So it's basically spoofing the GPS signals.
Basically, and like you wrote an article on spoofing GPS location using local Wi-Fi networks, and so this could do something similar. Then you can also change the cellular data. Like you can get really down into it, so you can change it between 5G, LTE, and this is mostly for developers. This has every use case for their phone, but we can also use it to play around with certain types of exploits. I'm going to restart the device because I don't know why it's not starting.
This is a lot, though. I mean, as soon as I finished installing mine, there was immediately a button to just run the device, and it just popped up and started running. So I'm now redoing it after opening a project, but it's really easy to just have a device that starts acting as though it's a normal Android device just on your screen.
And then, okay. I don't know why this Nexus is not recording.
I pressed the power button. And
I tried that on the old one, and it wasn't working. So here's a Pixel 3a. Of course, I was testing this right before. Okay.
Hey, see, I guess it just takes a second.
So this is a Pixel 3a, which is actually a really nice phone. It's like a good budget phone, but that's besides the point. So I'm starting it now. Okay. And this is the first time I'm starting it, so it's going to set up for a second. And then, I don't know if they can see your screen, but right here, it's just acting like a fully functional Android device that you'll get right out of the box. It even has like a fake network and stuff. And there's a Play Store, so you can actually download and test apps that way. But we're going to be installing the vulnerable application using something called Android Debug Bridge, which is a command line tool.
Cool.
So let's go ahead. Okay. So now I can go ahead and show Android Debug Bridge. It's pretty easy to install, especially on Linux. I think you just do an aptitude get for Android tools. Windows, it's a couple more steps, just because you have to add the path to your path variables manually. But once you get it working, if you just type in ADB version, then you can see Android Debug version is working. And so this is normally used by developers, hobbyists, anything like, to be able to debug problems that are going in with their device. So it's basically a way to interact with the device using the command line. So if we type in ADB devices, we can see a list of devices that are either virtually attached to the computer or are directly plugged into the computer via USB.
And do you need to do anything special on the device in order to get it to show up like this, or is it just on by default?
That's a really good question. So if it's a virtual device, like created in AndroidStudio, it's going to show up right away with no settings you need to change. But if you want to use this for your real phone, there is, and I think it's in, I forget what the exact setting is, but I think it's in developer tools. You have to enable a USB bridge if you want to plug in a real device and use ADB. That's a really good question. And if you want full access to the device, then you have to root the phone. If you want to see like, all the files directly, even if it's a virtual device, you're going to have to root the virtual phone in order to actually see all the files from the command line, which is another reason why you should be really cautious about rooting your phone. So to download, so now that we have, once you have Android Debug Bridge installed, you can go ahead and actually install third-party APKs onto the virtual device. And in case you don't know, an APK is just the file extension for Android apps. And so we're going to be installing a program called, I should have had this tab open, Android. We're going to be installing a program called Damn Insecure and Vulnerable Application, or so aptly named DIVA. And it's developed by this Indian cybersecurity team. And it just shows a lot of examples of how applications can be misconfigured, and then you can use that to test how to exploit those misconfigurations. So basically just like Metasploitable, but for phones. So I already have the DIVA APK file open. Programs. Yeah, DIVA beta.apk. So to install it, my history. Oops. Sorry, I should pull up the command really quick.
That's okay. So for this is emulating a vulnerable application or a vulnerable like operating system configuration?
It's emulating. So it comes with 13 different test vulnerabilities, and most of them are emulating a misconfigured application, but some of them are emulating also a misconfigured operating system.
Oh, interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, because I know there's a lot of things people can switch on in Android that might not always be the best settings. So that makes sense.
Yeah. So, okay, sorry, I got that command right here. Okay, and so just navigate to the directory where this DIVA beta APK file is, and then we're going to use Android Debug Bridge, tag S. And then we're going to want to type in the name of the device we're targeting. So for me, it's emulator 554. And then we're going to want to specify that we're installing DIVA beta.apk. Okay, and then
that was it?
Took a second. It's already installed. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And we can see it's installed if we go to settings and we navigate to all apps, apps notifications. I never get used to using an Android phone with a mouse and keyboard. It's so
Yeah,
weird.
I actually did, because back in the day when I was trying to find some interesting ways of creating like USB rubber ducky exploits for an
Uh-huh.
Android phone, I just plugged in like a mouse and a keyboard and would just like click
Uh-huh.
stuff and like type stuff and just see what would happen. And there's a lot of like hotkeys built into Android that I didn't know about. It's kind of
Really?
neat.
Like
Yeah.
keyboard hotkeys?
Yeah,
Huh.
keyboard hotkeys, like keyboard
That's really
combinations that
weird.
will do stuff. Yeah.
Okay. So once you do get used to using your Android phone, you can go to, I'll just do it again in case. So you go to the Settings tab, and then Apps and Notifications, and we'll press this little See All Apps button, and then DIVA should be there. It's alphabetically ordered, so it should be easy to find, and then we can go
Awesome.
ahead and open it. And so here's a quick little introduction, and yeah, there's 13 different misconfigurations stored. So like you can see, most of them are for, like you're saying, misconfigured apps. So the one we're going to be covering today is insecure logging. So that's like a quick example. If the app runs into an error, and that could be like a user input error, or it could also be some random thing going on with the app. It's going to save it to the log so developers can debug their application. But sometimes there's sensitive data entered into certain fields. Like this one, enter your credit card number. If for some reason the app isn't built right and there's an error when you try to enter your credit card number, it's correctly going to want to log that information so developers can see when it happened, know everything about that event, so they can try to fix that error. But they should also be sure that they censor a credit card number. So I know credit cards aren't 4 numbers long, but we'll just say our credit card number is 4321.
So just as like an example for how this might affect a normal person, if you downloaded an application that had you sign in to maybe like a third-party app, like maybe it had like a third-party login app or something, and it was misconfigured to save any error or any crash silently to a log that anybody had access to. Maybe they had a server set up to catch all these logs and it was open to the internet. If you were logging in using your credentials and it wasn't actually stored properly, this could potentially expose anything. It could expose credit cards, it could expose credentials. It really just means that any information passing through that app has the potential to be logged and passed on to a server or some other way of storing that information that might be completely open or completely insecure.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So this is a threat you might encounter from any application that just has problems with the way they're storing data. And you might never know this because, it might not be malicious. They could just have a problem where they're not making sure that the data that's being stored and maybe accessible publicly is being sanitized from having information like a credit card or like a login password.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah. And this is what you were saying earlier. Like, even if you have no intention of like actually hacking people, which I don't think most people should, if you do want to be an Android app developer one day, like this is something you might not have even thought about unless you use like something like this. And then you can see, wow, this is an issue this is a mistake that's actually pretty easy to make. Insecure, like logging your information. And so, like I was saying, if you check out, it's going to do, it's saying that an error occurred, but this error is occurring on purpose, obviously. And so if what I like about this exploit so much as a first demonstration is this device is not rooted. So as long as you can connect Android Debug Bridge to that device, this could work. So to actually go ahead and perform this, we're going to use ADB again, and we're going to use something called Logcat. A whole bunch of garbage is going to be dumped onto the screen at first.
What does Logcat do? I'm assuming it's like cat, but for logs?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's seeing anything that's being logged by this virtual Android device, because remember, it is ADB, so it only really cares about Android devices.
Right.
So here's a whole bunch of random stuff that the phone is doing in the background. But in case we do this checkout, you can see some new stuff popped up. I'm going to go ahead and stop the log. And and then if we go and scroll back, if we find it, so here was the last log that the app is closed. Let's go ahead and search for it.
This is me every time I do anything in BetterCap. It's just like looking through text.
Yeah,
it's very, very small for a particular string.
Text. So there is better ways to do this. Like I could have saved this to a file, and I could have Control F. I could use a grep, but that's not pre-installed with Git Bash. Where was it? I know I saw it change. Let's try it one more time.
Yeah.
Go ahead and back out. Insecure logging. Oh. Okay. So we're at a steady state. Insecure logging. Our credit card number is, say, 5555. Oh, okay, here it is. So
there we
DIVA
go. Oh, yeah, I see
log
it.
error. Yeah. So this just could be a normal error. So it had trouble processing this credit card, but there was no reason to log the actual credit card number that the user input.
Right. So that could expose all sorts of things. And again, this could be anything. This could be like login credentials. This could be a credit card number. The problem here is that the data is being exposed, and we don't know where this data is going to go. Maybe the developer has configured this to go to a server, and they don't really care because they think it's just going to be, automated logging stuff. So they haven't bothered to put a password on it and just figure no one will ever find it.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that gets breached all the time when developers have something exposed that they don't mean to expose. And this is a perfect example of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's so many other exploits you can test with this, but the only problem is that you normally do have to have the device rooted. There's some we can cover, but I just wanted to do a quick introduction into virtual devices and DIVA as an app.
Yeah, no, this is really cool. What are, just without actually doing them, what are some of the other pre-installed vulnerabilities that it has? I can't quite see them on the screen.
So there's like insecure data storage, and so this would be an app that it's storing your data onto the phone, and it's not doing it securely. And so the reason you need the device to be rooted is you need to access the device as root to actually be able to see the files. Let me, I forget the exact command, but let me go into the virtual device files. 1 second.
Yeah, this is really cool. I appreciate that we can test out multiple different ways of setting up a device to be vulnerable, because there's all sorts of tools that are like supposed to detect this stuff or attack this stuff, but like actually going and knowing what kind of vulnerability you're creating so you can target a tool on it is really, really helpful.
Yeah. So really quick, because I think it's a good demonstration, if you just type in ADB shell, should come up. Make your device. Oh, sorry, I have to connect to it first. One second.
That's okay. I'm just going back through the other stuff that was being logged and looking at all the activity that it's saving.
Did you already get ADB installed onto your computer?
No, not yet. I'm still playing with just creating virtual devices. It's cool, and it's also interesting that, it looks like once you install the Google Play Store, you can just install like random normal apps too. Would this be a way that you could like just start to mess with apps that are already out there and start seeing whether or not they have vulnerabilities?
Yeah, exactly. This is just an easier way to like poke around the actual Android device.
The only thing...
It's a simple command. Sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, the only thing I hate is that you have to sign up with an actual like Google Play account. You can't just like start downloading apps from a phantom device.
Yeah, but I have like 4 Google burners at this point, so.
Create an account for my child. No.
Yes.
I feel like I won't be able to download many apps with that. Yeah, it does require a phone number. That's unfortunate.
And it doesn't work with if you try to use a Google Voice number, it gets mad.
Yeah, well, of course, because they know. They already know about that. So, let's see. What are you trying to do right now?
I'm just trying to actually go into the File Explorer with ADB, and I forgot the first command you need to do. I know it's like something like connect.
To connect to the particular.
Yeah.
Got it. Serial number commands. Okay. Well, if it's taking...
Yeah, it's fine. But basically, I just wanted to show that this device is not rooted, so I'm not going to be able to see all the files.
Got it. Oh, interesting. And just looking through the documentation, it looks like there's actually a lot of interesting stuff that you can do with ADB. Like you can connect to a device over Wi-Fi.
Yep. Bluetooth.
Yeah, I see the command for that is ADB connect and then the IP address, colon, and then the port, but probably doesn't work the same way for doing it over serial.
I'm going to try something stupid. Emulator
Disconnect.
5554.
ADB kill server. Okay, interesting. Right, so is there, I guess if someone did want to root an Android device, but a virtual one, is there like a well-established process for that, or is it still kind of the Wild West?
Yeah, there's more streamlined ways to do that. That's possibly a topic I can follow up in the future. But yeah, I don't have any rooted devices on this computer as of right now. So I wish I could demonstrate that, but maybe for a future live stream.
Yeah, still very cool. As I was saying, a lot of people have requested stuff about Android hacking. Sometimes they need hacking with an Android phone, and if we're able to give a user the understanding of what you would gain from rooting an Android phone versus also what you're making vulnerable, then showing off, if someone were to get access to your phone, like suddenly they can read all the system files, like, that could be a very bad thing if you have something that you don't want to be read off of that, or if you don't want something injected to it. So, rooting your phone does create a lot of problems, but if you're going to root one, by all means, do a virtual one and see if you get enough of a benefit out of it to justify, the potential risk.
Yeah, it's like the same thing. Like you're going to want to install, if you want to like dual boot your computer or switch to a different operating system, why not just start with a virtual machine and see if you actually like the operating system before committing to installing it. Same principle.
Nice. Cool. All right. Well, I think that's probably everything we should cover for today. Going into anything else is going to take probably more time. And I think that should probably be its own topic. If you guys enjoyed this, you should definitely pipe up in the chat. Make sure to ask questions in the chat or via Twitter to let us know that you're interested. So make sure that, if you want to see more about Android, definitely sound off and let us know that that's something you want. I, for one, would definitely love to see some more stuff on rooted Android devices and also maybe going through and testing some more of these vulnerable configurations. So if you guys want to see that, let us know and we'll have another section on Android. But for now, what would you recommend people do once they get an Android, a virtual Android device up and running? Like, what's the best way for a beginner to get started with playing with this sort of thing?
Yeah, obviously get ADB installed, and then the developers of DIVA Vulnerable, I know I'm gonna butcher that pronunciation. They provide like little hints, like they kind of make it a little game. Like I can show you real quick. On how to actually exploit all the different features on this app. DIVA, let me open it. So like this one, it shows like the objective of what you're supposed to do. So find out where these credentials are being stored and what's vulnerable about it. And it'll give you a little hint so you can get started on how to explore it. And there's other people have written like Medium posts and their own blog posts on exploiting this app. So it's a good way to get how to practice interacting with an Android device with the command line using ADB. And then there's other frameworks that you can explore. There's a Ghost framework and there's PhoneSploit, and those are both it's kind of like Metasploit. It makes hacking a little bit easier because it's a built-in framework, so it has like tab completion, and you don't have to get used to all the ADB syntax. Like as you can see, I was already struggling with.
Oh, cool. So there's some things that have kind of like scripted this out and almost provided like a platform. Yeah. So if you know what you want to do, maybe it's easier to do that than working with a debugging program that's kind of more meant for developers and might give you a lot of information that's either unnecessary, confusing, or otherwise extraneous.
Yeah. Ghost framework and PhoneSploit are good places to start.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's everything we can do today. Thank you, Nick, so much for showing us all the stuff with Android. And again, if you guys are interested in this, pipe up, let us know. We'll do another episode on it. If you want to follow Nick, what's the best way to follow you on Twitter?
Yeah, you can at Nick Godshall on Twitter. You can hit me up if you have any ideas or if you have any questions about specifically installing AndroidStudio or DIVA or ADB onto your computer.
Sweet. You can also check out Nick's articles on Null Byte. There's a lot of really good ones, and you can find him on the Null Byte YouTube channel. He is now the most consistent host of the show. So if you have any ideas for Null Byte episodes, I'm sure he's all ears for those as well.
So look out for this article. It's going to be under the pseudonym Kofax.
Sweet, sweet. All right, and per always, if you appreciated this, Varonis has a lot of other great resources as well. You can check out the AD PowerShell class, which teaches you how to do scripting in PowerShell for Active Directory. And you can also check out these streams. They're always saved on the Security Forward, that's Security FWD YouTube channel. Thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.